Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Revving Up with Revenge. I'm your host, Quang Do, and I'm joined by none other than Marco Pierallini, co-CEO of Akeron. Thank you, Marco, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Awesome. And where are you joining us from? Whereabouts are you today?
I'm in the beautiful Lucca, Italy, in Tuscany.
Okay.
It's a hot day, like an Italian summer, and nice weather.
Okay. Well, I as someone that lives in Texas, I will always take hot.
Yeah, you're used to it.
Yeah. I'm definitely used to it. So I'm curious with Marco, with everything going on in the news, and you can't open your phone without hearing about AI. Just curious, what's your mind? What do you think about when it comes to the topic of artificial intelligence?
Artificial intelligence today in the technology space, of course, is a buzzword, but it's not just a buzzword. It's really a thunderstorm that is investing, that is, let's say, hitting everybody. Okay, everybody as people and also as organization. In what is happening in the organization is not just the adoption of a new technology as it happened in the past, but as soon as you start working with the artificial intelligence, you realize that is something much bigger than just adopting a new technology. So it's something that requires not just someone who decide which model to adopt, okay, because this is kind of the traditional technology choice between one platform, one technology and another. But it's really something that needs to be done at process level, organizational level, people mindset level. So it's really a new world for the organization. IT organization, software development organization, of course, are the first one to be impacted by AI because it's not only reviewing internal organization process and etc. It's a new way of developing software, and it's a new way of including functionality in the software. So it's really it's impacting a software company from all the different sides. And today AI is not just a GPT, a chatbot to talk with, but today we are talking about agentic AI, and agents are really something that is completely changing the world of doing things at organizational level.
Yeah. Many people say that AI is bigger than when software moved from on-prem to the cloud. Some are saying AI is even bigger than the internet.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I agree 100%.
Wow.
I agree 100% because, cloud was mainly bringing your hardware from your own data center to someone who can manage and scale, the infrastructure as you need. And at the end was about a different way of consuming software and paying for the software, not anymore as an asset, but as a service. But at the end, from an organizational point of view, it didn't have any specific big impact, The internet was different because internet really changed the end, let's say, without internet and also without the cloud, internet and the cloud, without these two technologies, also artificial intelligence was useless, or probably not. But at the end, the impact on the organization, on the processes, on how people are educated, because this is something that, AI will have an impact also on how people will be educated. It's something that it's not comparable with the impact that had in the past internet or the cloud.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The things that you're able to do, it seems as soon as you learn what it can do, you realize that it can do much more. And to your point, it is far beyond just chatbots and getting quick answers. It's how, in some ways, consumers understand, interact with the brands and pick products, software, whether that, any sort of human to human interaction is fundamentally being changed.
Yeah, originally AI was a different way of searching things and having answer and getting answer, because instead of Googling, you started, asking chat. That probably was the one that really changed the world, okay, 3 years ago, 3 years and something ago. But now it's something that is much more, and the progress that we are seeing, okay, about what is possible now and what will be possible in the future is also something that we have never seen before.
Both exciting and a little scary, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Marco, I want to go back to something you said a second ago, that AI is not just chatbots, but it's agentic and agents. What do you mean by that?
I mean that with the agentic AI, we are moving from a technology that can answer your question and can, in a very articulated way, okay, can create document that you asked to create, of course, can search about information that you require. Now the agent can do more because they can act, okay? And that means like a human, okay? They can start making decision based on certain based on certain information they got, okay, based on the prompt, okay, they've been created, okay, and so they can really work on a software like a human being can work on a software, okay, with the good and bad that this means, because the agentic AI. You can ask an agent to perform a certain task on a certain software, and also now you can also ask the agent to perform certain task whenever something happens and something is triggered. Okay, so but this is just the beginning, and what we are seeing, it's something that. What was not possible 3 months ago. I'm not saying 6 months or 1 year, because 6 months or 1 year and today it's like probably 10 years in the past. We see that it's possible, in the next wave about the new model, and it's kind of a snowball. Okay, where it's becoming bigger and bigger, and it's like a fire that start vamping and auto feeding. Okay, this is what we are seeing.
Yeah.
And again, this is good. This is exciting, but also scary.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see something like this, at least in my lifetime. No. It's truly a as you said, it's a thunderstorm of a change.
It's a thunderstorm.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Marco. So once if agents are able to act on their own, who's responsible if they do something wrong? And how do you trace it and understand these actions that they're taking?
I mean, this is a very good question, because who is responsible for certain task that has been done? That have been done. And so I think that we have to talk about governance and how to govern the agents. Okay, when they make a decision or they perform an action, okay, because in the past any task performed by a human for auditability reason, governance reason, and etc., you always need to know who did perform that task at that time in that system. Okay, now we need to do the same, but even more, okay, on the agent level. So it will be important, and any system needs to track, okay, which agent did a certain task or a certain things in that specific moment, in that specific system, like for the human being. But what is even more important is to track how the agent decided to take that action or to make that decision, okay, on which type of data, on which type of reasoning process, and etc., so you can understand why the agent made that action at that time in that system, okay? So whatever is related to auditing, the action or the task performed, but also, and this is something that should be considered when you design the agent and systems on which the agents can work, having also the trackability of how the agent, have thought about the action to perform on which data.
Yeah.
It will be very important, especially if we want to, because if an agent make a wrong decision and why he made a wrong decision and so took a wrong action, you can tweak the prompt or include something that this won't happen in the future. It's like when you ask a person who performed a task not in the right way, and you ask, okay, why you did that? And you understand that, he did that because, and there was something in his reasoning process. You can inform him or her to do something different in the future. So this is something, again, that, you have to translate, this concept of understanding why a human being made the wrong decision or performed the wrong task. And so you try to correct and to adjust that behavior. You have to try to do the same when it comes to an agent making a wrong decision or taking a wrong action. You need to understand why, because if you understand why, then you can tweak the skills or the prompt and try to make that not happening in the future.
Yeah. And what is the infrastructure required to be able to do that? And how do you maintain it, right? How do you maintain it so that you can understand, to your point, Marco, when are the agents acting appropriately? Why do they make mistakes? And even the opposite, when they make right decisions, how do you track and govern all that?
Yeah, I think you have to work, let's say, I think there will be two levels, okay? It's like there is the level of the systems on which the agent will work, extracting data and then performing tasks and so on. So the existing system or the new system, the foundation of any IT system of an organization. Okay, you have your ERP system, CRM system, ICM system. You have a landscape and this is the base infrastructure on which the agent will work on. Okay, you have to work on this level, on the infrastructure level, as well as at the agent-centric level. So where you define the agent with the prompt, with the skill, and whatever is needed, to guide the agent to perform the right action and etc. So you can, it's not enough to work only at the agentic level or agent center level on top of the foundation of your IT infrastructure. You have also to work, and this is probably what we require biggest investment from the organization in the future, at the infrastructure level. I usually use an example of the self-driving cars. Okay. The self-driving cars are not arriving in the market as quick as expected and as broad as expected, in the different cities and so on. Not only because of the self-driving car itself and the technology, in the self-driving car itself, but because the infrastructure, so the road, the traffic lights and etc., are still the same and they are not designed for the self-driving cars.
Yeah.
And, this is the same also in the world of artificial intelligence for the organization and agentic AI and etc. It's not about the technology of AI and of the agent. Sometimes it's about the infrastructure. So if you don't modernize your infrastructure, and make your infrastructure able to work efficiently, and when I say efficiently, I mean, in terms of token consumption for the agent. So because the more complex is for the agent to understand the system, and the more token you are going to spend, and also the highest is the probability for the agent to make an error. That's so you have to work to modernize your infrastructure to make accessible by the agent in an easy way, and to prevent as much as possible the agent to make errors. Like if instead of having a traffic light where the self-driving cars needs to see the red light, you have to stop and etc., you have a signal that instead of the traffic light, any self-driving cars will stop. It's much safer, and that would be much, let's say, easier for the self-driving cars to perform the right action. It doesn't have to interpret, okay, it's red, I have to see the red, and then I have to stop, because you stop immediately. Because instead of having the light turning red, you have a signal sent, to the car, and the car immediately stops. So this is, the example that I usually do when we talk about infrastructure and what we have to do on the agent center level and on the infrastructure level. And again, it's not about how fast the AI technology goes. It's more how fast people and the infrastructure on which the AI we have us to work can evolve, to stay aligned with the latest technology from the AI side. So it's not about the AI, it's more about the infrastructure on which AI has to.
Yeah, I love that example. And I imagine working on the self-driving car is way more exciting than working on the traffic lights. And people are not.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to work also on that side.
Yes.
Because it's the combination of the two that makes everything possible and, prevent accident to happen and so on.
Yeah, 100. That's a really good example. Thank you for sharing that. It's got me thinking. So, and another thing, I guess, to play off that analogy, right? Agents run on data, like cars, whether they're self-driving or not, run on fuel or electricity. So how do you ensure that the underlying data is good enough to trust? And because that's, the foundation of everything, right? To have
that's the foundation of everything.
Yes.
That's the fuel of the self-driving car. You can have the most beautiful self-driving car, but without fuel, it doesn't provide any benefit. And it's the same for the artificial intelligence. So the data is the fuel of AI, and the better is the quality, the better is the outcome. So as always. So now, it's probably a couple of decades that we are talking about importance of data and importance of quality data for making decisions and so on. Now I think it's even much more important than in the past because the better is the quality of the data. But in general, I would use a different word today. It's not the quality of the data, but the quality of the knowledge. Okay.
Huh. What do you mean by that?
Data is a part of the knowledge, okay? Because, the numbers, but what I mean is probably knowledge to me is the combination of structured and unstructured data. Okay, that's because it's not just important that an agent can access the data in your system. Okay, that's of course so any type of data, human resource data, sales data, finance data. The data are everywhere in an organization. Okay, but what is important today is also transform the knowledge that is in the head of the people, in the brain of the people, something that is not written anywhere. Okay, in something that is written, documented, and can be accessed by agent. Because if you're able to transform the experience of your people in an organization into something that can be documented and provided to the agents, this is really something that change the ability of an agent incredibly. So this is the reason why I'm saying it's not just about the data. That is something that we are talking about since a long time, okay? And still requires a lot of effort, to make the data clean and reliable and so on. Otherwise, any AI project miserably fail. But I think that the more an organization will be able to transform the experience and the knowledge of the people in something that is well documented and provided to AI, that it's really like cloning your best people. That's what AI, can do, because if you're able to take your best people and take their experience and write, and document what they do and what their experience is all about, and then you make this knowledge accessible by agent, it's like taking your best sales rep, the best performer. If you're able to extract what he does or she does, the experience, how she or he makes a decision and so on, and document all these things, and then use the agent, to train and to, you can replicate or almost replicate, your best talent, or at least the behavior of your best talent through the agents.
Wow. Wow. And thinking about that future, and I again love that analogy. You're cloning, you're replicating your best people to do specific tasks or maybe multiple tasks. So how, if you're a sales manager, right, and you've been really good at people, process, managing relationships, what or even forget sales manager. If you're an account executive, right, and you've been used to again managing people, managing processes, and now you have these agents that in concept and in theory are clones of yourself that are working. What skill set is that, and how do you build that skill set to be able to do that?
This is part of probably the most difficult and critical change that organization will be facing in the future if they really want to leverage the AI technology and the agentic AI and so on. Because the organization of the future will be an hybrid organization where people and agents will work together. So a traditional manager has developed specific skill to deal with human, and how to deal with human. In the future, we'll need to have skills also on how to interact and most importantly, to supervise the action of the agents. And, like in the past, if you see one of your person in your team, making a wrong decision or performing a wrong task, you ask why and you try to understand. Okay, so you have a dialogue, okay, and try to make him or her learning by mistakes, okay, because you have this kind of feedback. In the future, I mean, the feedback will remain, but will be different, because probably you'll have to see, in the log how the agent has performed this. One of your agents has performed a certain action, and instead of providing feedback in the traditional way, you have to tweak the prompt and to include what was not included in the prompt. Okay. So this is a way of how the managers will have to change. I still think, I really hope that for doing certain things, the human touch will remain. Okay, I don't want to think about a society where the human touch will be lost forever. Okay, so I hope closing a deal and through shaking an hand will remain, because it's something, and I strongly believe that will remain.
Yeah.
But many other things I'm sure will change.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's hard for me to believe that in the world of sales, especially B2B sales, that you're going to get to a point where there's not a human involved at some level. And to your point, knowledge is still required. And
it's about trust,
Yes.
It's about trust. When you close big deals, if it's a B2C and you have to buy, I don't know, whatever you can buy on Amazon, probably this can be 100% automated. Artificial intelligence can do great things in proposing the consumer, the right item at the right price at the right time. That's for sure. But in the B2B deal, I think trust is still an important aspect.
100%.
And I don't think that trust can be, delivered by AI agents.
Yeah. Well, we'll check back in 3 months, Marco, and maybe they'll be different. Going back to what you're saying, and I agree. I think trust is always a part of it, and both at the front end and the back end of the sales event. But if an agent is helping with prospecting, helping with follow up, how do you pay a salesperson appropriately? What do you pay them on? And how do you ensure that it's fair?
I still think that if you provide the same agents with the same capability to different people, you will get different outcomes. So I still think that the human in the loop or the human supervising or the human advising and guiding the agents will make a difference. And so I think that the work done by a sales rep or an inside sales, working not anymore alone, but using agents, I still reward, the work done by the human being for its supervising activities of the agents. I still believe that agents will extend the ability of a person exponentially. So what I'm seeing is that, and this is also something that I typically use as an example. If you have two people, one, the value of these people, the first one is 2, the second one is 3 in a scale, of 5. And you give them the same, technology, AI, agents, and etc. The result is that you multiply, you elevate at the second power, I don't know exactly their number. So 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3, it's 9. Yeah. So what was a little difference, without the agents will become a very big difference because 9 to 4 is 5, 3 to 2 is 2, is 1. Yeah. So this is something that is going to happen because AI will amplify the ability of the people. Also, small difference will become much more evident when the AI will play for both. So and this is something that we are seeing in the ability of a software developer. So for 2 software developers, having AI helping them in developing software, we saw that similar software developers, with not a big difference. So then after the AI was introduced, the difference was much more evident. And this is all about their ability really to leverage the agents. But the agents are the same, Yeah. But it's the way you interact, the question you ask, the direction you give to the agents that makes the difference.
Wow. That makes a ton of sense. So that means, I guess I would interpret it as that in a scale of 1 to 5, you would rather have 2 5s than 3 3s, right?
Long story short, that's in the future, the difference of productivity of people will be bigger and more evident than it is today, So that's the point. And this is something that we should talk about, social issue and etc. regarding, this aspect that AI for sure is introducing, about, people to hire, people to fire. But, this is something that it's not about technology. It's about society, stability of the society and etc. So these are different teams, but AI will have an impact also on this front.
Yeah. I can only imagine how it's going to impact not just the software businesses.
Not only software business, because it will be everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anything that is based off of
Lawyers, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's
exciting and scary. That's the theme.
exciting and scaring.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Marco, you mentioned this earlier, and 2 points. You said everyone has access to the same tools, but a lot of AI projects are failing. There, a lot of people are giving up, and at an enterprise level, what makes the difference? What allows some companies, assuming that we have all equal access to the same technology, what is the difference maker for AI initiatives and projects that fail versus those that succeed?
Okay, this is also a very good question. And first of all, I think that I wouldn't say projects are failing. Okay, I would say, let's say, I learned something from a project that didn't go live. Okay, because more than a failure, we have to talk about experience I got from and something that I learned because I run this project. Okay, because what has failed yesterday or what is failing today probably could be something that in 3 months won't fail anymore. So that's in the era of AI. Okay, but plus I think that if we probably there are two most significant reasons for project failing. One is availability of data and knowledge. Okay, if you don't have the right data or you don't provide the right knowledge to the agent, that means access to quality data and quality knowledge, you have poor answers from the agents, but not because the technology is not there. It's because you don't have yet structured your knowledge base, you don't have clean your data good enough. And so the combination of these two things, it means that before, or another aspect, you don't have yet an enough modern infrastructure to run the agents. So it's either one of these three things, okay, that are data are not enough or not enough quality. The knowledge, that you have to provide beyond the data is not yet there. And so you have to work on the, let's say, company knowledge base. Or the infrastructure is not modern enough for agents to perform and act efficiently. These are, where you should work first if you want a good foundation for. It's not enough, okay, because but it's if one of these three aspects, a good knowledge, good and quality data, and modern infrastructure is not in place, the probability that the AI project or agentic AI project will fail is significant. Okay, it's not irrelevant, let's say.
Gotcha.
And then you have also to decide what is the best, process to try to redesign using AI. Because sometimes you select the wrong process. And the last one, you fail just because the AI is not yet there. And so you have to wait, not 3 years, probably you have to wait 3 months or 6 months, and then retry again. Because if the problem or the issue was the AI was not yet there, what you have seen is that in a very quick time, the technology evolve, and so it's worth to retry.
Got it. Very useful and interesting insights, Marco. Last question for you. With all that we've talked about, everything that's changing, what advice do you have for folks in go-to-market, sales compensation? What should they be studying to stay ahead of all these things that we've talked about?
First of all, they have to be curious, okay? They don't have to be kind of scared about AI can take my job and etc. Okay, because you have to have a good attitude regarding this new technology, and you have to try using this technology as much as possible, because it's only when you try using this technology that you really understand the potential. You are engaged. You see this technology as a friend and not as an enemy. Okay, because very often, there is the fear that, this technology is going to take my job, and this is probably not the right attitude. Okay, this is probably the attitude that it's like if you are a surfer and you see a big wave, you don't have to be afraid, because otherwise the wave, you'll be eaten by the wave and you cannot surf the wave. So that's so you have to be curious. You have to try. You don't have to, if you fail, or let's say if some test or try have not the result you expected, you don't have to stop, okay, because otherwise, and you have to keep trying, and you have to put yourself in change mindset mode, because if you're scared about changes, this is probably not the best time to live in, okay, because changes are almost every day. Okay. If you like changes, this is probably the best time in your life. And so it's really about your attitude. But learning this technology at the end is not technically difficult.
Yeah.
It's more, and this is also something that we need to understand what type of education our children will need to have in the future, because definitely something will need to change. And unfortunately, again, there are not training courses. Yes, there are very basic training courses, but the only way to learn is to try and to experience yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, and I agree, it's not very difficult, and it's also not optional.
Yeah.
If you're in these fields, if you're going to be impacted by AI, which is largely everyone, you need to understand it and you need to embrace it. Marco, thank you again. This has been a great conversation. I truly appreciate the insights. Always great talking to you. And for everyone listening, thank you again for joining another episode of Revving Up with RevEng. I'm joined here by Marco Pierallini, co-CEO of Akeron. Thank you all, and have a great day.
Thank you very much. Have a great day too.
All right. Cheers, Marco.
Cheers.